Hello viewers, and welcome to another match of Warhammer 40,000 Conquest. My name is Mitch, and I am the Hive Tyrant. Today, I'm pleased to present another game sent in by John Gobeil. He's our player sitting to the right, and for today's game, he's decided to play as our first Chaos faction Warlord Zarathur High Sorcerer. To the left, we have a gentleman named Brett Gosling, and he instead is going to be playing as our original Tau faction Warlord Commander Shadowsun. To the right, John, holding our initiative token, takes his opening deploy action, and it's in the form of affixing the 2-cost unique attachment Slaanesh's Temptation to planet number 4. It increases the cost required to deploy any army unit by Brett put out to any planet apart from number 4 by 1, but Brett already manages to circumvent that penalty by putting out a copy of Earthcast Technician to that same planet. So for the cost of 1, it's got a command icon, 1 attack, 1 hit point, and further, it has the added benefit of allowing Brett to take a look at the top 6 cards to find any drone trait card or an attachment to reveal it and then to add that to his hand. At planet number 5, John throws out a copy of the 1 cost, 1 command icon, plus 1 resource bonus Rogue Trader, and note that as our very first round, the planet under contest during combat is going to be Karnath, that wildcard planet, which allows you to activate the battle ability of any other planet on the tabletop. So that could be moving a unit, it could be a random card discard, it could be both players putting a unit directly into their HQ without any required cost, or it could be stealing 1 resource. But things are going to bounce back to Commander Shadowsun. Note that John is going to be having initiative during combat at the first planet, unless Commander Shadowsun arrives at that location. At present, Shadowsun doesn't have any cards whatsoever in her HQ, attachments to affix onto other units, but Shadowsun can also take 2 or lower cost Tau faction attachments from hand and slap those onto units, but in order to derive benefit from that effect, Brett is going to have to put at least 1 other unit on the tabletop, unless Shadowsun decides to show up to planet number 4. She'd definitely be able to put an attachment on that Earthcast Technician. She'd also have the benefit of expunging that copy of Slaanesh's Temptation from that planet, but considering players don't often like to trigger Yvonne, it's kind of an undesirable destination for her. Looks like planet number 2, Shadowsun throws out a copy of the modified 3-cost Vashya Trailblazer, a 1/1 mobile keyword unit that could potentially win a card and a resource for Brett in helping to refund some of the invested resources he's spent to put that unit into play. And then, after John throws out a copy of the 2-cost Rotten Plague Bears to planet number 1, we see a copy of Recon Drone at planet number 5. So, that Recon Drone is no cost, no attack, 1 hit point, and it's got 2 command icons. It conveniently beats the 1 command icon associated with John's Rogue Trader, so that's a little bit of additional income for Brett. But at planet number 1, thus far entirely uncontested, that 2-cost copy of Rotten Plague Bears has a command icon. It's got no attack whatsoever, but it's got 2 hit points. Importantly, it's a body that's going to be able to win that planet unless our Tau faction player does anything to oppose it, and it also has the action where you can exhaust it, pick an enemy unit, and that unit takes 1 point of damage. You could do that during the command phase, you could do that during the combat phase. If Zarathur is present, that's going to be amplified to 2 points of damage, and it looks as though our Tau player is going to end up throwing a unit to planet number 1. Note, John also has a copy of Plague Bears sitting at planet number 3, and assessing our opening lineup of planets, looks like we could see a blue technology icon victory as early as planet number 4. We could see a green strongpoint icon victory also as early as planet number 4, so it's looking like this could be a pretty quick game indeed. Really, the only undesirable planet type icon given our current distribution of planets is going to be that red material type. So it looks to me like Shadowsun has 2 remaining resources. I'm trying to rack my brain in regard to what, if any, kind of combat unit Shadowsun might have access to for the cost of 1, which would be modified up to 2 by Slaanesha's Temptation, but really apart from Earthcast Technician or Viorla Marksman, I can't really think of anything. So let's think for a moment. If Zarathur were to go to planet number 1, he'd basically be able to guarantee that he's going to be able to win at that planet, unless Shadowsun goes to a planet where she already has a unit. The best thing she's going to be able to do with her ability is to dump a copy of Command Link Drone onto herself, and if Zarathur were to go to Planum, he'd be able to conveniently shut down that copy of the Viorla Marksman. Zarathur is going to be able to beat Shadowsun in one-on-one combat, and if Zarathur wins Planum, he could even set himself up quite nicely to win at an additional planet, but looks like Zarathur follows his rogue trader. He is sent to planet number 5 to guarantee that he's going to be able to get that +1 resource bonus. Commander Shadowsun arrives at planet number 3 in a bit of a pile of glare, and if Shadowsun's going to be able to kill off that copy of Rotten Plaguebears, that's going to be a forced random card discard, whereas if John Gobeil is going to be able to win the battle at planet number 5, something presumably he won't have too much difficulty doing, he's going to be able to not only prevent his opponent from what he's already done, which is collect a lot of resources, but he could also steal resources additionally from Shadowsun. So if Shadowsun doesn't have any just ability to throw out units between Slaanesha's Temptation, between resource stealing, that could definitely just cripple our Tau players' economy. But planet number 1 is going to be a card and a resource to the right for John Gobeil. Planet number 2 is going to be a card and a resource to the left for Brett. Planet number 3 is going to be a couple of cards for Brett. Planet number 4 is just going to be 1 resource for our Tau player, and planet number 5 is going to be 3 total resources for John Gobeil. Looks like our Tau faction player has revealed his choice of allied faction in putting out a copy of Eager Recruit, which, considering that Ambush is a deploy, that costs 2 total resources. The Eager Recruit itself has no command icons, it's a 2-1 unit, and it looks like the Rotten Plaguebears uses its, well, first of all, it's got initiative, so it could attack for 0, but John has got the first opportunity to take an action, therefore that action is going to be 1 point of possible damage dealt out to the Eager Recruit. Ion Rifle is going to be discarded to spare the Recruit from being destroyed. That means that the Eager Recruit is not killed, and now Shadowsun has got a copy of Ion Rifle in the discard pile for subsequent reattachment to any eligible unit. We come to the end of a combat round. Neither of our players have apparently decided to retreat, and John, again with initiative in regard to combat turns and actions, he's going to exhaust his copy of Rotten Plaguebears, and I can only imagine that we're going to see a shield card discarded, because otherwise it would have been kind of silly to leave your Eager Recruit at that planet. The Eager Recruit itself tried to take a swing, but, redundant copy of Slaanesha's Temptation prevented it from being killed. The Eager Recruit is going to be spared by a copy of the signature event Squadron Redeployment, and it looks like we see a copy of Tzeentch's Firestorm being played out conventionally. I believe that was for at least a couple points of damage, but that Tzeentch's Firestorm is going to resolve. That's going to be a dead Eager Recruit. I suppose John could have taken a bit of a gamble. He could have just used it as a shield. He could have spared himself a couple of resources, but he would have maybe allowed the Eager Recruit the opportunity to retreat, and I suppose he wanted to avoid doing that. But really, whenever possible, you want to try to save yourself as many resources as you can. But regardless, John ends up capturing Karnath. He's going to use that ability to relocate his copy of Rotten Plaguebears to our soon-to-be planet number 1, so that way they don't get swept up into his HQ. They're not going to arrive at a planet exhausted, and looks like we see a copy of that Vashya Trailblazer being discarded. So I can only imagine what happened here was going to be the Rotten Plaguebears were exhausted, they came to the end of a combat round, then they readied, then at John's first eligible combat turn, you checked for victory, Planum relocated that unit to that planet, then the Rotten Plaguebears exhausted, they dealt a point of damage, and they killed that 2-command icon Vashya Trailblazer. So, looks like Commander Shadowsun took a point of damage from the Rotten Plaguebears at the end of a combat round, so Shadowsun dealt a point of damage to the Rotten Plague Bearers. Then, at the end of a combat round, they were able to retreat after having successfully dealt a point of damage to Commander Shadowsun. And then, we've just got one additional combat. Looks like the random card discard from John's hand, associated with his losing that battle at Boundless, was a Rogue Trader. And now, at planet number 5, Zarathur takes a swing, handily kills off that copy of Recon Drones, and that's going to be one resource stolen from our Tau faction player. We enter our HQ phase. That's going to be 4 resources and 2 cards for each of our players. Our new first planet there is now Planum, that relocate a unit planet, and our new 5th planet is going to be Iridial, the healing planet. So, our players are collecting their resources, collecting their cards. Initiative is now going to be in the hands of Commander Shadowsun, and remember that Shadowsun does indeed have a copy of a ion rifle in her discard pile. So what exactly are we going to see from Shadowsun? If John is able to win planet number 1, if he's subsequently able to win planet number 3, that is going to potentially be the game as quick as that for him, and what, if anything, can Shadowsun do to stave off that effect? So, I can't imagine that John is going to want to send his Warlord to planet number 3, despite that enemy Earthcast Technician sitting at that planet. It's an undesirable battle ability for most Zarathur decks. He'd end up destroying that copy of Slaaneash's Temptation, and until Shadowsun sends herself to planet number 3, she's going to have to keep on incurring that big resource penalty, and she suffers it again by throwing out a copy of Righteous Initiate to planet number 1, so for the modified cost of 3, it's a 1 command icon, 1 attack, 2 hit point unit. It's got the Soldier trait, and it's got the Unstoppable specialization, where the first time it takes damage each round, you prevent that initial point of damage, and then it's able to gain a +2 attack value bonus, which does persist for the remainder of the phase. So if John wants, he could use his Rotten Plague Bearer to damage it now during deploy, or he could damage it during command, and then by the time they get to combat, it'll have used up its Unstoppable specialization for the round, and its attack bonus will have disappeared, but if John does a play like that, then he's going to have to deal with just 1 command icon versus 1 command icon, and if, that means he's not going to win any cards or resources at that planet. If Zarathur shows up at planet number 2, the Rotten Plague Bearers will be able to exhaust for 2 points of damage, and you'll still be able to work around there until the end of the phase attack bonus. So I would not be surprised to see Zarathur arrive at planet number 1 at some point during the command phase. The Rotten Plague Bearers deal damage to that Righteous Initiate, and then if Shadowsun shows up at that planet to throw an Ion Rifle or Shadowsun Stealth Cadre, something like that, onto that unit, a lot of that may or may not change what happens, but I wouldn't be shocked to see Zarathur's Flamers and the Rotten Plague Bearers, some combination, result in the death of that Righteous Initiate. Remember that the Zarathur's Flamers are going to be able to attack for 2. They're a 2/2 unit for 2 with command icon, and then they can use their action to deal 2 points of damage to an army unit. So Zarathur arrives at planet number 2. Shadowsun arrives to planet number 3 to destroy that copy of Slaaneash's Temptation, and what I'm predicting will happen will be at some point during the command phase, we'll see Rotten Plague Bearers deal out a point of ineffectual damage to the Righteous Initiate. They'll basically use up that Unstoppable specialization activation, and then the Righteous Initiate will be able to only attack for 1. It's not going to be able to kill the Plague Bearers, it's not going to be able to kill the Flamers. Then the Flamers can attack for 2, potentially killing off the unit at the end of a combat round, unless we see another Space Marine faction eager recruit dropped off or something like that. The Plague Bearers are going to get another opportunity to attack, and then if Zarathur's Flamers have already taken a point of damage, you may as well sacrifice them just to kill off that unit. But certainly a lot of different options when you're a Chaos faction player, and considering that mountain of resources, we might also just see another Tzeentch's Firestorm or something like that. But planet number 1, that was going to be a card and a resource to the right for John. Note, he's exhausted his Plague Bearers, so I can only imagine that was a point of damage dealt out. The Righteous Initiate deals a point of damage to Zarathur's Flamers, and now, just like I was thinking, the Flamers are going to exhaust to deal a possible 2 points of damage to kill off that present Space Marine. And if John wins this battle, then he's going to be able to relocate any of these units to Boundless or Yvonne, and he will have initiative during a following round at our soon-to-be first planet, or, I guess he could harass Shadowsun, but I don't think that's tremendously likely. He doesn't have any big, beefy elite to stand up to a lot of Tau faction firepower, so I didn't exactly see what our Tau player discarded, but I would only imagine it's a 2-value shield card. We're going to come to the end of a combat round, and all of our units are going to ready. That's going to be the Rotten Plague Bears with another opportunity to attack. Keep in mind that Zarathur won a couple of cards from planet number 2. We now see that Rotten Plague Bears exhaust again. It's going to threaten a point of damage to that Righteous Initiate. Shadowsun had won a resource at planet number 3. That is going to be a successful point of damage dealt to the Righteous Initiate, and I can only imagine we're going to probably see an action here. Interestingly, the Righteous Initiate takes a swing. Squig Bomb is going to be discarded, and that's going to be the Zarathur's Flamers preserved, and definitely the longer you can keep that unit alive, the better. The Flamers live, and now they have another opportunity to attack. That's going to be another 2 points of damage potentially dealt out to the Righteous Initiate, and it's either going to die or it's going to have to retreat, but it looks like it is killed. Note, planet number 4 is going to be another 3 resources here during the command phase for John Gobeil, and now he's presumably going to be able to win Planum. We came to the end of a combat round. All of our units here are going to ready, and now John is going to be able to move any of his units to whatever planet he would like, whatever suits him most. He could, okay, so it looks like he's going to throw his Rotten Plague Bears to planet number 5, where he could potentially win 1 card during the following round. Note, Zarathur is going to win that battle at Boundless entirely uncontested, so that's going to be a forced card, randomly discarded from our Tau faction player's hand, and doesn't that about suck? That is going to be a discarded copy of Gun Drone, so that 2-cost attachment which confers area effect, well, a 2-cost army unit that can be played as an attachment, and that definitely sucks to see that go. Commander Shadowsun, when she arrived at planet number 3, she had the effect of equipping that Earthcast Technician with an ion rifle, so it's going to be able to attack for 4, and of course upon winning a battle, Shadowsun has finally managed to rid herself of the temptation of Slanesh. So we're in the process of going through another HQ phase. Our latest planet, our final planet to be seen in this video, is going to be Atrox Prime, the planet which allows you to pick an adjacent planet or the enemy HQ and to deal 1 point of damage to each and every enemy unit at that location. Note, initiative is going to be once again in possession of John Gobeil, and he is definitely going to be incentivized to try to kill off that copy of Earthcast Technician and set himself up quite nicely to soundly win this game during the following round. Looks like John Gobeil's got a nice distribution of units in regard to pulling in additional economy, and I can't quite tell how many cards each of our players has in hand, but to the absolute nightmare of Commander Shadowsun, we see another copy of Slanesh's Temptation, the third and final copy included within John Gobeil's deck. Currently affixed to planet number 4, Shadowsun responds by throwing out a copy of Ambush Platform. It's a support where it decreases the cost asked of you to deploy attachments by 1, and as a combat action you can deploy an attachment from your hand. So Gun Drones is one of those attachments you can, well, it allows you to deploy it as an attachment, so even though it's an army unit, it's eligible for Ambush Platform, but it is not eligible for Commander Shadowsun. So John Gobeil has potentially 3 planets that he's looking to win command struggles at. John threw a copy of Ammo Depot into his HQ, so if at any point he throws out a lot of army units, if he uses up a lot of shields or events, as soon as he hits 3 or fewer cards, that 1-cost Orc allied support is going to allow him to retrieve a card off the top of his deck, albeit at the cost of exhausting that support. It's one of those god tier cards that I definitely recommend you slot into your deck if you're playing Orcs, and definitely consider going more Rogue Trader heavy than Void Pirate, but looks like both of our players have still got quite the abundance of resource tokens, but what definitely stings for Commander Shadowsun is she's once again finding herself having to pay some sort of premium for each and every one of these cards, but I guess this is kind of a tricky state of affairs here. Like, Shadowsun doesn't have any units in her HQ, so she would be fine to show up to planet number 4. She'd block John Gobeil from having the opportunity to win a card, but if Shadowsun does that, then Shadowsun's going to give up the 2 cards associated with Boundless. Shadowsun's going to be forced to do a random card discard, and really it's looking like there are a fair few tricky decisions for Shadowsun to make. Note, Commander Shadowsun throws out a copy of the 1-cost common Space Marines faction army unit 10th Company Scout to planet number 4, so it's just 1 cost, no premium required whatsoever. 1 command icon, 2 attack, 1 hit points, and other soldier trait units. If Shadowsun arrives at that planet, it would be a great opportunity for her to put an attachment into play for free, affixed to that unit, but that 10th Company Scout is going to be outside of John's victory condition, and unless we see a squadron redeployment, that signature event, of which we've already seen 1 discarded as shields, then Shadowsun really isn't going to have any opportunity to relocate that copy of 10th Company Scout, unless Shadowsun attacks the Rotten Plague Bearers, then the 10th Company Scout deals the killing blow, then we come to the end of a combat round, the 10th Company Scout has the opportunity to retreat, so I suppose Shadowsun could be a little bit sneaky and get that big beefy, potentially buffed, augmented 10th Company Scout away from that planet, but it looks like John is being a little bit sneaky. During the deploy phase, he exhausts his Rotten Plague Bearers to potentially kill the 10th Company Scout, and what he's gambling on is, like, currently he's not winning the command struggle at that planet, but he's not losing it either. He's breaking even, so in exhausting the Rotten Plague Bearers, you might be able to kill the 10th Company Scout, but if you do, you're not able to win the 1 card bonus during the command phase because you're not going to win a command struggle, but if that unit dies before Shadowsun arrives and dumps an attachment onto it, then you dramatically increase the likelihood that you're going to be able to survive that battle. And if Zarathur has a copy or 2 of Infernal Gateway in hand, if Shadowsun arrives at that planet alone, sure, she'll be able to kill off that silly copy of Rotten Plague Bearers, but a Noise Marine Zealot, a 3-cost, potentially 4/3 unit in the presence of a Warlord is going to be an absolute nightmare for Shadowsun to try to beat, and indeed, it's going to be pretty much impossible for her to do so, but looks like we do not have that situation happen. That 10th Company Scout is going to be outright obliterated, and now we've got a copy of Splintered Path Acolyte being played to planet number 5. This was actually quite some time ago, I'm just now catching up, but that's going to be a 1-cost 1/1 with a command icon that, upon deploying a demon, you can sacrifice that unit to decrease its cost by 2. And I was just talking about these fellows. It's one of the Warlord friend units. It's the 3-cost Noise Marine Zealots, making their presence known at planet number 1. They're a 1-command 2/3 unit that gets an ephemeral +2 attack value bonus whenever a Warlord is present at that planet. Shadowsun does indeed go to planet number 4, tempted by Slanesh. Zarathur instead arrives at planet number 2. Zarathur is going to command initiative, and that's going to be a fantastic opportunity for Zarathur to swing with a flamer for 3 against that Earthcast Technician. We could see a command link drone preserve the life essence of that Technician, but even if that happens, Zarathur's flamers could be sacrificed. Note that I'm talking about the one that has a point of damage already on it to get the absolute most value out of each and every play, and that would be another 3 unpreventable points, essentially unpreventable points of damage, killing that Earthcast Technician prior to it having the opportunity to attack Zarathur for 4. But planet number 1 is going to be a couple of cards to the right for John Gobeil. Planet number 2 is going to be a total of 1 resource for John Gobeil. Note that forced random discard from planet number 1 is going to be a copy of the Heavy Marker Drone thrown into the discard pile of Commander Shadowsun. That means John is going to have a couple units enter his HQ for subsequent re-arrival at our soon-to-be planet number 1 the following round. Planet number 3 is going to be a total of 3 resources once again for John Gobeil. He's got an absolute just stockpile of resources there to fund a truly fearsome Tzeentch's Firestorm if he need fund such an effect, but just like I explained earlier, Zarathur's Flamer swings for 3. No shield icon, no shield card discarded whatsoever. That's going to be a dead Earthcast Technician, and I can only imagine that John is going to opt not to trigger Yvarn, and now he's got 2 just frighteningly powerful units. Well, okay, I guess John actually did decide to trigger Yvonne. That is going to be a copy of Gleeful Plague Beast put into John's HQ, and then a copy of Gun Drones for our Tau players. So a great play by John, and I'll explain why in just a moment. But at planet number 4, the destination of Commander Shadowsun won a card. Looks like she took a point or two of damage from dealing with that Rotten Plague Bears, which she was able to kill off. She won Iridial. She was able to pull points of damage off of herself. And then our planet number 5 there was a card and a resource to the right for John Gobeil. So we're heading into our potentially final our potentially final round. To get there, both of our players had to acquire 4 resource tokens. They had to draw 2 cards. What was great about triggering Yvonne is not only was John able to put into play a copy of Gleeful Plague Beast, a 5-cost Chaos Elite, 1 command icon, 3 attack, and 5 hit points. Looks like, by the way, that is going to be the GG right there. Good game, well played by both of our players. Congratulations to John Gobeil for managing to best our Tau faction player Brett Gosling, but like I was saying about Yvonne, the Gleeful Plague Beast would have arrived at planet number 1 alongside Zarathur. That would have been 2 points of damage dealt out to each and every enemy unit sitting at that planet. Zarathur would have, of course, augmented the damage dealt out by those Zarathur's flamers, but why Yvonne was particularly clever was, I believe at some point it became known that our Tau player had that copy of Gun Drones sitting in his hand, and if Gun Drones is being played out as a unit, then it's a 2/2 for 2. I can't quite recall if it has a command icon or not, but the take-home message there is that it's not going to give any unit area effect to. And if you've got multiple damaged Zarathur's Flamers, if you've got multiple damaged Rotten Plague Bearers, if you've got your Gleeful Plague Beast, the less area effect damage you can take, the better. So spectacular play on the part of John Gobeil. This was not exactly much of a match, as much as I'm loath to say it, but a nice clean game by John Gobeil, and well played all the same by Brett Gosling. So it definitely goes to show just how frustrating Slaaneash's Temptation played copy after copy after copy can be, and just an excellent little game all around. So viewers, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to hit that like button and consider subscription to my channel if you've not done so already, or if you are already subscribed, as ever, I always encourage you to share this content, because the more individuals there are that stumble upon these videos, the more people might give Conquest LCG a try, they might join our community, and of course, the bigger we are in number, the bigger message we send to Fantasy Flight Games, telling them to continue to support this product for years and years to come. If ever you'd like to get in touch with me, I would encourage you to do so through Facebook or on Twitter, and if you'd ever feel inclined to help support the Hive Tyrant, help me recover some of my file hosting and operating expenses, and further, to invest in improving the audio and visual quality of this channel, I would be absolutely honored, humbled, and deeply flattered were you to consider making a $1 monthly contribution to my Patreon. It definitely isn't much, but it most certainly goes the extra mile in showing that you care and that you appreciate the content I continue to produce. So, as always, thank you so much for watching. Another thank you to John Gobeil for sending in another excellent video, and as always, be sure to check back in again soon for much more Conquest LCG content to come.